Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show 857, we have a special guest joining us. Windows Insider MVP Ian Cunningham is going to be joining us. Talk about his enthusiasm for Windows 11 and what he's been doing with his Windows forums. He's run some great Windows forums. There's a whole community around Windows 11, Windows 10, and Ian's been doing it for ages. But we'll also be talking about some of these projects of sending Windows into space that he's going to be doing, and one that he worked on fairly recently as well, of getting an air balloon into the atmosphere and collecting telemetry and how he tracked it and all that kind of thing. So it's going to be really fascinating to talk to Ian. So let's get straight to Ian and Garry. Ian Cunningham, welcome to the show.
Hi Ian, thanks very much. Thanks.
It's great to get you on the show. We've met a couple of times, or once actually at a Microsoft event, a couple of times online, but you're a Windows Insider MVP like Garry and I, and it's great to get on the show because we've got loads of things I wanted to ask you about. But how long have you been a Windows Insider MVP for?
Good question. Right next to me, I've got the little stack of rings. Yes. I'm sure you got on the side of your wall. I'm just looking at it now. It's 2009 was an MVP, but the Windows Insider MVP just since the Insider program started. Yeah. So so similar. A long time. Certainly feels like a long time.
Yeah. So before you were Windows Insider, what was when you were an MVP, before they sort of reinvented the program? What was your sort of speciality then?
That was the Windows desktop experience.
Right.
So it's generally from a sort of end user perspective.
Yeah.
The experience that people get with Windows and how they interact with it. So yeah, that was my sort of route into the MVP program, and then became the Windows Insider program.
Yeah, which is pretty much how Garry and I started. We were Windows Media Center, and then Windows kind of the experience type things. So Garry is just trying to join us. Actually, I'm just gonna. So Gary's just joined us. So welcome along, Garry.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, it's been an adventure with Teams this evening, but I'm here now.
And the thing is, Ian got on with Teams, but first time. It's usually Richard has the problem, but this week it was you.
Yeah, one of us always has to have the problem. That's the
law. Yeah,
a nice tradition.
Yeah. Yeah. So Ian, you've been an insider for quite some time then. So before we go into some of the stuff you've been doing with Windows, and you've got one of the reasons why I get on the show today, because as well as being a Windows Insider MVP, you've got some great resources for Windows. You've got some forums. You've done some great projects, one of which is featured on the Insider blog about getting high altitude balloons and things like that. And you've got another one on the way. So that's why I wanted to talk to you tonight. But let's first a bit about you. How did you get into technology and Windows and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I think kind of like many of us, we have a bit of a natural curiosity for how things work. So when I think it was Windows 98 had its initial beta rollout, and you could pay Microsoft £15 or something like that, and they would send you a CD and you could test a pre-release version of it. I think it was about 14, something like that at the time. And I really enjoyed it. So, this is great. This is, I've got Windows 98 and everyone else has Windows 95. This is amazing. I get to see how it works. And then I set up a forum for that online just to sort of see what other people thought of it. Because it wasn't, other than news groups, there wasn't really many places that you could chat about this sort of thing. So I set up my first forum around about then to chat about Windows 98. And then that curiosity has continued through every subsequent version of Windows since then. All the way up to Windows 11.
So you must be one of the quite early forums then, that so Windows 98 time, because like you said, there wasn't a huge amount of web stuff around then.
No, I can't even remember what the forum software we used was. It was a precursor to vBulletin running on CGI of some sort, like BB boards. Can't really remember what it was called. Like really early days when I didn't have a clue about coding, and it was fun times. Bit of a blast from the past. I used there's a great website, archive.org, where you can type in any website and it can show you a little snapshot of what it used to look like, up to something like 25 years ago. So a few months ago I was having a little look and trying to revisit some of these old sites and see what they used to look like for a bit of nostalgia.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And
yeah,
I think that Windows 95 Windows 98 era as a sort of it changed the way that that brought people into sort of PCs, and it from being in all business and enterprise type stuff, it actually got consumers interested in home computing, and as it before that it was Spectrums and Commodores and Ataris.
Oh gosh, Spectrum 48K. Yeah.
Oh, did you have a Spectrum?
I did, yeah. I loved it.
There we go. Yeah.
I actually was considering buying one again on eBay. I loved it that much. I was.
I
wish I'd
a
not.
few up there somewhere. One over there somewhere.
Oh, I'm jealous. Have you got 128K as well, or the 2 plus or 3 plus?
I've got 2 plus with the tape drive and the 48 and a QL.
Oh, the QL. I don't even know what that one is.
That's the. Well, Gary, how would you describe the QL? It was the business machine, wasn't
it?
It was
the office machine. I think Claire was bringing out. Its biggest claim to fame was its storage method.
Yeah, it had the micro drives on there.
Oh, really? Oh, I'm gonna have to have a little. I'm gonna have to have a little Google after this.
It's in my loft, I think, that one. But the Spectrum's up on the shelf over there. But nothing else. But the QL, I know it's a bit of a detour, but the QL was this. Clive Sinclair was kind of sick of the Spectrum being considered an inferior product to some of the others on the market, like the BBC Micro, I think, and they went for the business market with the QL, which had 2 micro drives built into it. Wasn't compatible with the Spectrum. It didn't have some Microsoft bits in it, Gary.
You did, it did have some.
I think it had. I think it did. Did it have Microsoft Basic?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that was its claim to fame at the time.
Yeah, and it didn't sell very well at all, and kind of partly led to the downfall of Sinclair. Really, the machines were late to ship, and they were quite expensive.
And not particularly reliable either with the micro drives, which caused a few issues.
Yeah, but a nice looking machine. If you look at one of those, you see that you can see the resemblance between the 1 to 8.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now with the rounded keys as well. Yeah.
Very nice device. It looks really, very cool. So I think I had it on the show a while ago. Mine still works, but I'm struggling with the display to get a display on it at the moment. But I think you can get them working with some various little bits and pieces you can plug in. So so going back, so the actually having forums then was you were quite early into that, and so you sort of on a professional front, did you manage to use that sort of knowledge that you got from Windows and turn it into a sort of day job?
Sort of, yeah. My career's been a bit of a tangent. So I started off. So originally, I'm an aerospace engineer by profession, and then I didn't end up going into engineering for about sort of 10 or 15 years, and ended up in the world of IT. And now my career again, sort of in the last 5 or 6 years, has veered back into aerospace engineering again. So yes and no in answer to your question. I do use this sort of skills and the knowledge that I suppose I've always had that passion there, and I've involved it in work no matter what I've done. So I think one of the things perhaps that has been a good crossover in recent years is PowerShell. Although I'm not really a coder or and don't do a huge amount of programming, I just love PowerShell. So any chance to use that in my work environment, and I will use it. And
so what kind of things are you using PowerShell for?
Automating things. So sometimes some of the industrial machinery. So a lot of the time I'm building pieces of scientific equipment, and I might need to send and retrieve data from it with other machines using really quite strange configs, or reading text strings of data from something that's archaic. And PowerShell, I suppose, acts as an interface between all those different things. And the same with a lot of the home automation stuff around the house as well. That's the sort of way that I can hook into that as well, or in the workshop.
So we'll talk a bit about the forums in a minute, but I just wanted to mention that you mentioned about home automation. So that's something we've talked about a lot on the show, and Gary's quite into that. So what kind of things are you doing in home automation?
So I run Home Assistant, which I think we were chatting about a few weeks ago when we caught up, and it was so I have Home Assistant running as a sort of central hub, and then all of this normal consumer devices that will integrate with that, and then lots of ESP32s doing very random things. So some of them will be just measuring temperature and humidity. So one of the pieces of machinery that we use quite a lot is a laser cutter, and you have to monitor the temperature of the water coolant that goes through that, just to make sure that this glass laser tube doesn't overheat and explode. So there's a little ESP32 with temperature sensors connected to that, and then a flow monitor. So if something goes wrong, it will send an alert throughout the house and say,
right,
please go check on this. There's also an emergency button as well, which if I press it, will text my wife. And I did press it accidentally a few weeks ago, and she's a nurse, and so she ended up having to very quickly pop out and just give me a call just to make sure that I was okay, because this was the do not press emergency button. Connected via an ESP32, and it was indeed pressed when it should not have been.
So she thought you'd blown yourself up in some rocket experiment.
Basically. Yeah, basically, she was relatively relieved to know that wasn't indeed what happened.
I guess that happens quite regularly, so she's probably immune to it by now.
Well, no, it was the first time. It was only fairly soon before that I said to her, I was like, I will never press this unless it is a real emergency. If I press this, it's not like I would like a cup of tea, please, or it's a oh gosh, help. So yeah. That's one of the uses of the home automation stuff. So yeah, a lot of things are integrated. Particulate sensors. So a lot of the manufacturing I do uses 3D printers, and when you're using ABS plastic on that, it really stinks. And some of these air quality sensors dotted around the house, I just basically log that information and just make sure that those smells and fumes and VOCs aren't permeating through the rest of the house and going to cause problems.
Right. So those are what you're using to make the sensors. Then you mentioned the ESP. Is that a little board?
Yes. So an ESP32 is just a little board, quite similar to the Arduino boards that you get. These boards are about £5. I think they're actually a dual core CPU on board. I think it's dual core. Relatively powerful things, very cheap, really easy to program, integrates with virtually any sensor that you want. Fantastic little devices. So every time I keep buying packs of 5 and thinking I don't need any more, and I think I'm up to about 25 now, all doing something fairly useless and trivial throughout the house.
Yeah, and are they sort of wireless connect to back to a hub?
Yes, yeah. So they're just a 2.4 gigahertz wireless connection. I think there's Bluetooth on board as well if you wanted to use beacons or something like that with it. So yeah, fantastic little devices.
Yeah, that's a good little project. Well, it's also it's taking that smart home a bit further, isn't it? It's actually useful for your quality of living as well. It's not just ease of use.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things. So I bought a fan with this sort of lovely hot weather we've been having recently, and there was no way it wasn't a smart fan. It was relatively cheap to buy, but it did have a little IR sensor on it. And one of the things a Home Assistant can do is you can get one of these little ESP32 modules. You can add a little IR transceiver to it, point your remote control into it, record the key presses, and then it will send it back out again on command from Home Assistant. So I can say to I don't know if I think if I say the word Alexa.
Yeah, we have to be careful when we say that.
Yeah, that word, the word that shall not be mentioned. That word. Yeah. If I say that, I can say to turn on the fan, and it will do it using this IR blaster. So yeah, that's probably one of the most common uses I use it for.
And the back end, you say Home Assistant.
Yeah, Home Assistant, open source piece of software, very regularly updated. Excellent integration with virtually anything. If there's something that you can buy off the shelf that has any sort of connectivity to any sort of smart or any smart capabilities, Home Assistant probably already integrates with it. And their way of interfacing with these little ESP32 boards is fantastic. They have a module called ESP Home, and you can flash some firmware onto several of these cheap boards, and it will immediately appear in your dashboard, and you can tell it using fairly simplistic programming what you'd like it to do. It's so even a real novice that wants to get into home automation, that wants to venture out and do some of these complex things, could do it really quite easily and cost effectively. It's fantastic, really fantastic software.
Good. I think we've talked about that on the show before. Gary, is it something you run or something similar?
Well, I've tried it. I've used most of them as well. I was using Domatics. I'm now using SmartThings, but only very briefly. Most of the stuff runs on my own code. But yeah, and a Home Assistant is brilliant. I have to say the compatibility on it is amazing. The stuff it supports.
I think the low price of the sensors is what makes that interesting. Is you can throw sensors at things.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the SP chips, which are coming, we've got cheaper and cheaper over the years. So, yeah, really, really good. I think that the whole thing with Home Assistant, also how easy it is to run it and install it, and it's. I mean, obviously, it's a bit like all of these things at the moment. Not sort of, unlike I guess SmartThings is something. This is probably the one exception to that where you can actually buy a box with it pre-installed and it's all set up for you. But Home Assistant's pretty close to that.
Might be useful for me with the greenhouse because I've got a temperature monitor in the greenhouse. But I would like to have moisture sensors in the soil. And it's if you buy some of them. What you can buy gardening moisture sensors, but they're quite expensive, and I'd probably need quite a few of the various bits. So I think that would make a good little project.
Well, one ESP32 plus several moisture probes. I mean, the moisture probes, I think, if you buy just the sensor, about £2, something like that. An ESP32, about £5. Really, really good way of doing it. A fun project as well.
Yeah, because they're in Wi-Fi range as well. My greenhouse just so. Yeah.
So the next level will be automatic irrigation.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Automate actuators to open and close windows on it. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking because I was out in the greenhouse when I got home from work today. I think I should have opened the window because it's very hot in there. And I thought, well, if it because I do have the temperature, so I do have a sensor on for the temperature. So if I could trigger an actuator, then that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting little project. I could look at that as well.
I definitely think you should do that. I think that'd be great fun, actually. Really good fun. Make a good video as well.
Yeah, I might have to look at that. I'll certainly see if I can get. What do you do for power for the sensors?
Normally I'll power them from some sort of USB input that's nearby, or there's some little batteries, 18650 batteries that are 3.7 volts, really good for powering these things. And just little lithium-ion things, really quite. Because
there's no power in there. But I guess you could even use something like one of those phone banks. Yeah, or solar.
Solar panel charging. I've got that for a few of the outdoor sensors. Solar panels charging some of these LiPo batteries, and even in the middle of winter, there's still enough power to keep them running. Very low power modules.
Oh, that might be something I'll have a look at now. Let's go with thinking now.
Yeah, seeds been planted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and especially if I could get something that waters the plants for me, that's even better.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there's probably some module in Home Assistant that someone is pre-written to look at moisture levels, and then will drive a little water pump. There'll be something there.
That's interesting. Then that's got me interested. Now, one of the things the projects that you've been doing that is interesting actually got featured on the Windows Insider website.
Yes. So as a little bit of fun with the price of being able to do fun technology things coming down, mobile phone prices are coming down, GPS module prices are coming down. We thought it'd be fun to make a little probe and basically send it as high as we could on a high altitude balloon with the idea of capturing the curvature of the Earth and being able to see. Oh yeah, there we go. That's it. Yeah, that's one of the photos we managed to get. Yeah. So we sent this little homemade probe up using really sort of quite cheap off-the-shelf components and sent it to, I can't remember the final altitude. It was just shy of 100,000 feet, I think. And we got some cracking footage from the edge. I want to say the edge of space. I mean, technically that's not quite true, but it looks like it. It looks like it's the edge of space, but extremely high. So that's it.
So I've got. I'm just playing the video of that for anybody on the watching on YouTube. But what was the actual module that you sent up?
So I think this particular one was a phone. I think it was a a relatively cheap mobile phone that we'd pulled apart, and then added a GoPro, and there were a few other little sensors and bits and bobs in there. But the majority of this footage, I think, was from a GoPro and then a phone that we'd cannibalized and put some software on as a GPS locator. So yeah, it was really quite cheap, accessible stuff. And the footage that we got at the end, I mean, made our day. When we launched this thing, we went to, I think it was Mold in Wales, and we looked at the weather that day. We'd plotted the potential route that this balloon would, or the trajectory that this would fly based on the current wind conditions, and we figured out that it would land more or less just in time before it veered off the east coast of England, and in the end it ended up coming down pretty close to the A1 in Yorkshire. So it was pretty accurate forecast. Again, this is the forecast actually was a free website. I can't remember the name of it now, but someone has created an unbelievable resource for people who do this sort of thing, that you can plot your mass, balloon size, you enter the weather conditions and launch point, and it will give you an estimated landing point. You're given if you tell it the burst altitude. It was fantastic. So it's a really good fun project.
So essentially, so what was the balloon that you used? Like a weather balloon type thing?
Yeah, so this is just a giant latex balloon that on the ground you blow up to something like 2 meters diameter, something like that. And you use it looks underfilled. It looks like a saggy balloon. And you know, people on the ground that were watching us do this were like, "Oh, you're not filling it enough. It's not going to fly." And we're like, "No, that's intentional." Because obviously, as it rises and air density changes, this balloon expands and expands and expands, with the aim that we calculate roughly at what point we want this to burst at, and by underfilling it, but enough to lift it, it will burst at the optimally high altitude.
And the reason why you want it to burst at the set point is because you need to get this back eventually. So the longer, the higher up it goes, I guess the further it can go in a range, a larger range, and a trajectory range.
Yeah, exactly. So if we fill this balloon up to fairly close to full capacity, it would shoot up into the air, burst at a relatively low altitude. We'd collect it, 15 miles away. If we underfill it too much, it would drift up incredibly slowly and land somewhere in Eastern Europe. I mean, some people have sent these balloons, and they literally have crossed continents because they've gone for longevity. They've wanted to send this thing up, and perhaps they've used live telemetry so that they get some feedback from that. We had some live telemetry, but only the occasional photo and GPS data. We needed to be able to recover this balloon at the end to get the high definition footage. So we were very pleased when it landed and we were able to track it. Because I have to be honest, I didn't think we were going to see this balloon again. I think we sent it up and we thought, there's a 10% chance we'll get it back. But actually, it was all right.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing that amazes me is the distance that it actually travelled. So you're in North Wales in Mold. So then you said you were getting some GPS data back. So could you see almost real time the direction it was heading? But like you said, you calculated it with the site. But were you more or less following it?
We did at the start, and then the data stopped. And there could be a few reasons for that, because consumer grade GPS data and GPS chips, they are meant to stop working if you go above a certain altitude or certain speed. Just in case you go, I would like to make a homemade missile or something like that. They don't. It's frowned upon, so they disable it from using it. So that could be why we lost tracking. It could also be because we were just using GSM to send essentially text messages and a tiny little web server running at an unbelievably slow pace to see where this was. So it could just be that we weren't getting data access. But when this thing was once a balloon had burst and it was coming back down, we started getting data again, and then we rushed across. So we started meandering slowly over to the east coast, and we stopped in Manchester. That's where where I live and where my friend that I did this live. So we stuck around in Manchester just until we got some data, and then very excitedly jumped in our cars and raced over there as fast as we could to try and find this thing once it landed.
That must have been a real buzz moment, that though, when it came alive again. You got the live telemetry, it's back. Because
it was. I mean, we cheered.
You weren't sure you weren't going to get to see it at all, were you?
No, exactly. I mean, there was a real cheer and some whooping going on when we found this, and likewise when we turned up to the field where this module had landed, we just couldn't see it, and this field was a relatively small triangle located between the A1 sewage works, and then there's something else very unforgiving on the other side, and we were thinking, oh gosh, I really hope it hasn't either landed on one of these things or gone too close. And the field was relatively sparse, but there was a little bit of sort of corn and grass and so on. I can't remember whether the photos on there of the field, but there wasn't too much in it. And thankfully we caught a glimpse of this bright parachute. We were going around literally trying to ring the probe to see if we could hear the ringtone of the phone inside it. And then we caught a glimpse of the parachute and got it. And yeah, great day, really fun day.
Yeah, I mean,
what's
the chances of landing on somewhere you can retrieve? I mean, you could have landed in a tree or a hedge or a lake or a motorway or anything.
I was convinced. I was absolutely convinced that was going to happen. So the probe itself is just a big polystyrene box and then a parachute. So even if it had landed on somebody's head, it would have been a sort of gentle clonk. So we were quite worried about damaging something if it came down. So which is one of the reasons we have to make this thing so light.
Yeah. That's fantastic though. So, and then you collected that telemetry, and I think I've just played the video of that. So you then got that video back that you could look at. So
yeah. So we sent the Lego astronauts up as well. So we'd both of us wanted to ideally go into space one day, and we thought, well, that's not likely to happen. So we'll send a little Lego miniature version of ourselves up instead. And it's now proudly sat on my desk as the closest that I'll likely get to space for some time.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic. It's a great story, and the fact that you managed to get it back is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I guess if the weather had turned bad or anything, it was so unpredictable.
Oh yeah, I mean, we really had no idea what would happen. So we had to pre-plan the day as well. So when you launch something like this, you have to put something called a NOTAM out, or they call it a notice to airmen, that you basically tell air traffic controllers and pilots, we're going to be sending something up. This is the location, this is where we expect it to be. And then they tell us, that's fine. Well, hopefully they'll say that's fine, but please don't go near this airport or go near this thing or watch out for this. So because we'd had to do this a few days in advance, we were keeping our fingers crossed that, weather and everything was going to work out the way we'd hoped for.
So you can't just think, oh, I'm just going to send it. I'm going to go in my back garden and send this up. You've got to pre-plan it and pre-book it effectively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, so part of the reason we went out to Mold was partly, like I was saying before, about this sort of distance, but also it's quite isolated. There's not really. Liverpool Airport was a little bit away, but we could avoid that. But yeah, you have to be quite isolated and planned. If people started sending these up from the back gardens, you could literally end up closing an airport down, because if one of these gets close to an aircraft, they don't know what it is. They don't know if they need to worry about it or not, and then they'll close things down for half an hour while they figure it out.
Yeah, and then making you not the most popular person.
No, exactly. I think the holidaymakers would be very annoyed, and I suspect the airport would be sending somebody round to have some stern words.
Yeah. So this isn't something you can just kind of do as a whim. You really need to plan this out and go to the extra lengths you've gone to calculate height, distance, and everything else.
Yeah, because when you provide this data, when you ask for permission, they do want to see that you've done your homework, essentially, just to make sure that it's. But anybody can do it as long as you do this sort of preliminary work. Anybody can do it if they buy the bits in and want to go for it.
Yeah, it's. I think it's fascinating. I guess there's probably a whole community of people doing this kind of research and experiments.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's quite a few people who this is essentially their hobby. They'll send different projects up there. Sometimes experiments. Sometimes random bits of advertising. They'll do all sorts of things. And some people are probably doing this every month or so. Yeah.
Well, that's amazing. Now, when we were talking the other week, you've got a sort of basic idea in your head for plans for another one of these type projects.
Yeah, so I mean, Windows 11 is, it's something that we're all quite passionate about, and it really appeals to get Windows 11 in space. I just think there's something quite special about being able to do that. It's not what you really expect it to be doing. So a Raspberry Pi 4 can run Windows 11, and I think as we were discussing, I think I was one of your videos that I ended up watching on how to do this initial process a couple of months back, and it's a Raspberry Pi 4 board is the perfect size to send up in a little probe.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably the next. Oh, it definitely is the next project. Getting Windows 11, finding a small board, getting some sensors that will provide some interesting data, finding a way that we can get live telemetry from Windows 11. I don't want to sort of take shortcuts by using a mobile phone or something like that this time to get telemetry. I want to do everything through the Raspberry Pi 4 using Windows 11, so that from the moment it launches to the moment it lands, it's something that Windows 11 is powering, sending that data or telling us where it is or sending video back or maybe even something live. I mean, that would be great if there's a way that we can get some reasonably reliable higher bandwidth data from this. It's at least during some parts of the flight. That'd be fantastic because we could essentially stream this thing going up there.
Yeah, I guess, Gary, Windows 11 supports sort of 3G, 4G data cards or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's probably, if you can get the drivers that support it on the Raspberry Pi, then I'm sure it's doable. That it's a bit of a challenge, I suppose, because it's more power hungry, I guess, than these little low powered Arduinos or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things that if we send up one of the little power banks to go with it, because a moderate sized power bank probably would be enough to power it for this sort of 2.5 hours or so that we would need. But it starts getting quite heavy then, and I think that's one of the things that are going to be testing. So I do actually, when you think about dongles, right next to me here, I've got a little 3G dongle that I've been testing with one. So not with Windows 11 on the Raspberry Pi 4, I should say though, but just with Windows 11 to see how it works and how reliable it is. But yeah, the more I add to it, the more power hungry this is going to be. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's power requirements that will be the thing that makes or breaks this project. Yeah.
Because, and I suppose the other thing is whatever development you're doing, it's all ARM based, isn't it? Windows and ARM rather than x64.
Yeah, exactly. So like you were saying before as well, drivers, that's probably one of the key things as well here, because something that works on a desktop just fine is probably going to be quite difficult on the Raspberry Pi 4. I mean, you never know. There's a lot of people out there who tinker with these things and have done some of the legwork. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there's somebody's already sent some kind of 3G 4G dongle on a Raspberry Pi 4 with Windows probably somewhere. It's just putting it all together and with your telemetry. But that would be amazing if you can get sort of live real time telemetry in it. And I suppose the like you said, the weight is the issue with the weight is not so much the rising, then it's the returning weight, I guess, because you can put a bigger balloon on it, but then you've got is it the payload weight coming back down you've got to be careful of? It's a bit of both. I suppose it's a bit of a trade-off, because we could attach a bigger balloon to it, but there's a sort of a sweet spot where price of helium and the balloons and things makes it a reasonable project. Now I would say maybe under 0.5 kilogram. This is just off the top of my head, but it's probably somewhere around about that, where that's a sort of nice sweet spot, and then you go above that, and if, like you say, on the way back down, if something like the parachute fails and you have something that's 1 kilogram falling out of the sky, even if it is in a padded box, I wouldn't. I would feel a bit uncomfortable with that happening.
Yeah. but it would be quite. It would certainly be interesting because if you're running Windows, you could use Visual Studio or something like that, and actually get real time telemetry back, and
exactly,
and stream it back.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's something just very appealing about using Windows 11 for something that it's not really designed to be used for, but it definitely can do. Absolutely can do it. It will just need a bit of tinkering, which I think is the fun.
Yeah, definitely. It's a shame that they started with Windows 10 IoT on Raspberry Pi and it was fully supported, and then they kind of just backed away. I don't know. We never really found out exactly why they just kind of moved away from that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame because I mean that would have been ideal. That would have been the ideal platform for something like this. It's an interesting point. I guess that it's a lot of the IoT stuff now it's sort of developing separately to Windows, and they've perhaps made a pragmatic decision and just thought the core version of Windows that we've got at the minute is just a bit too far away to pull in IoT stuff as well. But yeah, it's a shame. I would have quite liked to have seen that personally.
Yeah. And I suppose there's things you can do around the packaging of Windows and everything else. But like I've run Windows 11 on the Pi 400 and it works fine. And I think you were saying when we were talking, is it one of the boards that you were looking at is actually the same CPU and same processor and everything as the 400?
Yes, I think maybe this was Gary. I think maybe it was you telling me about this one actually. The compute module, is that?
Oh yeah, that was it.
Yeah. So the latest compute module is virtually identical, smaller footprint. Just needs a little bit more interface. It's not quite as easy to interface with in a physical sense, connecting things to it. But it's smaller, lighter, equally as powerful. So that's it looks like that could be quite a good way to go.
Yeah, and then you can there's so many sensors available that work with the Pi as well. That I think you can get temperature and all sorts of things. So it's a really interesting project, and I said the Windows element makes it even more interesting because it's sending Windows 11 into space, which I don't think anybody's done. I think we've had a few Raspberry Pis go into space, but I think they weren't running Windows. So I think the highest altitude version of running Windows you could get. Maybe that's the thing you're going for. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to find out if there's on the International Space Station or something like that, someone's running Windows 11. Because if not, it could be the highest altitude version of Windows 11 so far.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, I could definitely submit some unique bug reports for that one. Failed due to altitude.
I'd love to see their faces when they made that.
Yeah.
When they look at the telemetry, and they see that altitude.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how you do with this, because that's going to be a fascinating project, and I think you should I think there should be quite a lot of people interested in that and help you out along the way as well. So I'll definitely follow along with that one.
Yeah, nice one. Once I'm starting assembling and building this thing, coding, I will definitely post something public about it, so that I think there'll be a lot of people who've got some ideas to contribute to it, which would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Windows 11 in space makes a good story as well. We're definitely like that. Now, the other thing that you mentioned that I wanted to talk about as well is the Windows 11 forum. You mentioned your Windows 11 forums. So so how you mentioned you've been doing so I guess you started the Windows 11 side of it when Windows 11 was announced.
Yes, I think it might. I think there's a chance. I've got a funny feeling that I'd registered the Windows 11 forums not long after Windows 10 came out. After Windows 10 came out, and then they sort of said Windows 10. That's it. There's not going to be Windows 11. I was thinking, I was all prepared. I had this ready just in case. And then lo and behold, not that long later, surprise!
Did you have Windows 9 forums as well?
No, I don't think I did. I think that's the one I missed, and actually it all worked out all right. So I had 7, 8. I think someone else has got the Windows 9 forums. I was like, oh no, and it skipped over that. So I was like, that works out okay. So I was prepared for Windows 11, and then when they announced it, it was a bit of a surprise. So got it up as quickly as possible. And quite a lot of the members on this are the same that would have been on the Windows 7. In fact, there's a few from before Windows 7 came out, but I'd say the majority of the members there are people who've used Windows 7. They've been part of that community, and then Windows 8 comes out, and most of them transition to that, and then Windows 10 comes out, and virtually all of them transition to that. So the community actually, although it's a Windows 11 forum, some of the people there have known each other for going on over 10 years now, which is great.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah, and I've just having a look there. There's a good selection of areas for people to look at. You've got troubleshooting and general news and all that kind of thing. Yeah,
so it's a bit of a mixture of things. So a large portion of the people on there, they'll have a problem with Windows 11 and they'll want technical support for something, so they'll come on. And some people are insiders that actually they want to talk about some new feature that they've seen, or maybe they've got an idea for something and want to refine it and before they submit it. So yeah, it's a good bit of a mixture of news, technical support, and then a bit of technical discussion about Windows 11.
Yeah, it's great to have a nice community around this stuff, especially if they come with you. You've all transitioned from one OS to the next OS, and then that's nice to be able to follow that.
Yeah, it's lovely. I mean, there's still a few in the community. They're still stuck on Windows 7. I do try and convince them, like, Windows 11's good. Really, you should jump ship. But yeah, it's nice that I think communities, online communities, maybe I'm generalizing too much here, but people that are perhaps under the age of 30. They're not used to forums and things like that. They might be use Facebook groups or something like that. But there's something I love about forum, because I've used them and run them for so many years now. There's something I just love about them. And a lot of the members on here, they've been using forums for decades. It's the first thing I do if I buy a car or some really cool hardware or something like that. One of the first things I do is I go and find a forum about it, because it's where you find all the useful things about that particular product.
Yeah, that's very true. I've got a lot of the music gear, and especially the old synthesizer ones. You can get a forum from it. You get a lot of good knowledge and useful tips on there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, synthesizer is a great example, because that's it's a community that's a niche thing that you can't just walk down the street or call in somewhere where you're going to find something. But online, you'll have people where that's their passion. They can all congregate in the same place, and you pick up loads of cool stuff and can share those ideas as well. Yeah,
it's really good for that. So it's Windows11forums.com. I'll include a link in the show notes for anybody to go and take a look. And you've got insider news on there as well, because you're testing the new builds out as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's quite a few Windows. In fact, I would say it's a surprising portion of the people on Windows 11 forums are Windows insiders. I suppose that if you're not here for seeking technical support and you're someone that's giving advice, you probably are a Windows insider, because you have that curiosity about wanting to see what the new features are. So yeah, it's nice having that discussion to chat about some of the cool things that are coming in the pipeline for us all.
Yeah, and are you on the dev channel trying out new builds?
Yeah, I have to confess that on my main PC I'm running bog standard Windows 11, and then on all my other PCs it's generally dev build. So if I'm in the workshop, that tends to be where I'm testing things out, because often I'm waiting for some piece of work to finish, and I'm generally having a poking around, looking at new tabs in Windows Explorer, or trying out some of the voice control features or something like that.
Yeah. So, what do you think of the sort of tabbed file explorer? Have you given that a try?
I've tried it a little bit. I mean, it's something I've been hankering for years. I've generally, as I'm speaking to you now, I've got 3 Explorer tabs open, which is fairly modest compared to normal. How have you found it so far?
Yeah, it's only showed up on one of my 2 devices that do the testing, but actually I like it. And I think where I like it the most is dragging and dropping, and it always seems to be dragging and dropping files between File Explorer windows, and rather than navigating through the tree each time or having multiple windows open, the tab just makes it so easy to do. So I think that's going to be good.
Yeah, I have to admit that's one of the things that I'm quite keen on as well. Is that the dragging and dropping. I think it was a particular limitation where dragging something from the desktop or Explorer to one of the apps that was open on the taskbar and not being able to drop it directly in there.
Yeah.
That was, oh gosh, that frustrated me from being used to that for so long. So now that we're seeing these improvements and the improved access in File Explorer, it's good to see.
Yeah, actually, Windows 22H2 is shaping up to be a nice update.
Yeah.
I know that's one of the things we saw when we were down at London for the Microsoft event,
Yeah.
but I think it is looking really good. And I've recorded my video of because I thought it was finished, and then they've added the File Explorer, so I think I need to go back and update the video. But
yeah, but
you don't really know you don't know whether they're actually going to ship it yet, because that's the thing. So it's playing chicken with Microsoft at the moment.
you know with Microsoft, as soon as you publish something, they'll update it.
Yeah.
Just look at our book.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, every time we did some of the book, they changed it 6 months later. Yeah. But yeah, that's all the fun of being a Windows insider.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's been absolutely brilliant getting you on the show. Really enjoyed talking to you. I think getting Windows 11 into space sounds fantastic. I do like the sound of that. And you've given me some ideas for the greenhouse. So I've got to have to see how practical it could be. But I think that might work for me. So I think that might be the next thing I need to look at.
I'm going to be watching videos to make sure it is now, because it's a cracking project for you.
Yeah. So I'll have a look at that. So Windows11forums.com. Where else can we find you on social media?
Main site is Windows11forums.com or Windows10forums.com. I don't use social media a huge amount, I have to confess. Most of my social interaction is on forums. I'm old school.
Well, I can definitely agree. I got rid of Facebook during the pandemic and felt much better for it.
Yeah.
Well, that's where we'll go then to find out about these some of the projects you're working on, and when you get a bit further with the Raspberry Pi one, we'll get you back on and we can talk about that again.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Well, I really enjoyed talking to you. It was great to get on the show. Another Windows Insider MVP, which was great. So thanks very much, Ian.
No, cheers. Thanks for Ian. Thanks, Gary. Thank you.
Thanks to Ian and Gary. That was great. Really enjoyed that. We'll be back same time, same place next week. You can follow me on Twitter at ISDixon. I've got some more music to play out with you. Check my other stuff out on SoundCloud. Let me know what you think. You can email me at digitallifestyle.com. I'll see you next week. Bye.